The only thing I'll tell you is that early on there was, like when we were reading, let's see, do you remember the story about the fire sled in How to Save a Soul? And everybody had various comments about that. And at one point, Jeff had a comment of, "Kids, try this at home." And I said, "No, do not try this at home."
Is this a story?
Anyway, no, it is not. Oh. Sorry. But that comment is just interesting comment, let's say.
Does it have anything to do with this?
This story is called Not Just a Popato by TheArchimage. Summary. 4 magic-using children, 1 potato gun. What could go wrong? Notes.
Potato can?
I am not a physics major, and certainly do not have any magic, so I don't know how well this experiment would work in reality. Probably not how it works here, where the effect is exaggerated against the scenery for comedy purposes. Potato guns can be hazardous and should only be built with adult permission and supervision and never pointed directly at anyone. They should definitely not be overclocked and loaded with dangerous materials except by trained experts.
Well, this is a try this at home thing.
Kids, absolutely do not try this at home.
Okay, is that what that story is? That what that story is like?
Those are the end of the notes.
Is that how it's special? I said it first. I said try this at home before you said don't try this at home.
Yeah, well, I'm just reading. I think he wrote knowing what you might come up with.
Right. Well, I came up with it first. Potato cannons. Interviewed the man.
Summer. The time when kids across the United States were let out of school and left to their own devices. When the total lack of responsibilities and the overbearing heat led to boredom. When there was never any shortage of idle hands to do the devil's work. It was a Tuesday, or perhaps a Wednesday. The difference blended into obscurity when there were no events or duties to differentiate between one day and the next. It was Toriel's week to have Azrael, and she always kept the house a bit warm, too warm in the summer, an attempt to get her children to play outdoors more. So Azrael woke up splayed out on the bed with all the covers knocked off and his tongue hanging out of his mouth. He flopped out of bed and put on some light clothing before grabbing his phone and heading downstairs. Frisk was already awake, sitting at the table with a bowl of cereal. Their mouth was full, so they nodded to Azrael once and only spoke when they were finished chewing. "Morning, Azrael." "Morning," Azrael greeted, raiding the bread box to grab an onion bagel. "You been up a while?" Frisk shook their head. "Maybe 10 minutes. It's hard to sleep when it's so hot." Azrael nodded in agreement with that. He toasted his bagel with fire magic and added cream cheese and sliced cucumbers to make a tidy sandwich. He poured himself a glass of milk and sat down at the table when his phone beeped with a new text message. Puzzled, he opened it up and read. He inhaled through his nose as he read, and a smile crept onto his face. "What is it?" Frisk asked, noticing Azrael's growing enthusiasm. "That was Kara," Azrael said as he put his phone away. Frisk raised an eyebrow. "They're up pretty early," they commented. Azrael nodded, his face all business. "They've been working on the plans. I don't think they went to bed last night." He guessed this was true because Kara's text message was full of typos and sentence fragments. Kara was normally one of those weirdos who typed in complete, punctuated, and grammatically correct sentences over text or computer, so if their typing had gone so dramatically downhill, they were probably sleep-deprived. "But they said they perfected the device and sent the plans over. Gonna download them now." He looked over Kara's scribblings, scanned into the phone, while he ate one half of his breakfast. They were quite detailed, pinpointed exactly how much magic and what type would be needed to produce the desired effects. There were some calculations to the side where Kara attempted to determine how strong a material the potato would need to be made out of, before they descended into furious scribbling where Kara gave up and decided on a material that would be way more than enough to handle the stress. "Wow," he said when he finished looking it over. "They really went all out on this. The only new equipment we would need is a new bullet, but it would take 4 types of magic to test the theory out. Frisk looked incredibly dubious. They didn't really use 4 magics at once, did they? Without using human souls even, I'm not that good, Azrael said. Besides, you know how Kara is. It was all a puzzle to them, all theoretical. They don't have the guts to test it themselves, so who knows whether any of it actually works? Frisk nodded. They stirred their cereal. Azrael chewed his bagel thoughtfully. They both swallowed. Then they faced each other with wide smiles. We gotta try it out! It started when Kara found the schematics for a spud gun online. It was not a terribly complicated bit of machinery, and the parts could easily be bought with the children's pocket money. It was a good afternoon project for Kara, Frisk, and Azrael, though they all agreed Toriel would never allow something like that in her house, so they agreed to keep it at Kara and Asgore's. It was a pretty simple design, using a bicycle pump to compress air and launch a chunk of potato at high speed. It would have stayed a pretty simple design if all of them hadn't had ideas on how they could improve it. Upgrade the loading mechanism to direct more of the gas into the projectile. Replace the bicycle pump with canisters of compressed helium. And then someone, somewhere, got the bright idea to throw magic into the mix. The first idea was simply to reduce the weight of the potato so the gun could push it harder. Yeah, apparently.
That would be cool. This sounds fun. Let's do it.
No.
Are spud guns an actual thing?
Potato guns? Yeah.
Let's do this.
This one...
Potato cannon. Let's make a potato cannon like this riptide. Make sure it's explosive.
Thanks, Archie. This resulted in their shot flopping to the ground only a few feet away. It turned out lighter objects experienced higher drag from air resistance, losing any possible speed boost almost instantly. So the thought went, what if the potato was lighter at the moment it was fired, but its weight was immediately restored? Wouldn't that allow it to get both power and the ability to cut through wind resistance? This time, when they fired, the potato vanished and the air was filled with the scent of unsalted French fries. It turned out, making a chunk of potato go that fast would cause it to vaporize almost instantly.
Wow.
Even if they could make the gun stronger, they had run into a hard limit by their ammunition, an impasse. But Kara wasn't done yet. The prospect of failure lit a fire under them. They would not allow it to end like this. There was more they could do, surely. They just needed some time. They promised to get this working and took the plans home with them. Azrael and Frisk had no idea what Kara was up to or what the result would be, but they knew Kara would think of something. If they were being egged on by their friends, there was no limit to Kara's ingenuity. That was the last they heard of them until that morning. 2 days later, once Kara had the opportunity to sleep off their late-night, early-morning session, and Azrael had collected the last few pieces to complete the project, they all agreed to meet in Toriel's backyard. Frisk and Azrael set up the target while they waited. It was a standard bullseye paper target propped up with a thick sheet of metal behind it. MK was the first to arrive, dressed in a halter top and skirt with bow tied on a head spike. Kara, still bleary-eyed from waking up, came with the gun. They nodded a greeting as they walked up to the group, only mildly surprised to see the non-dreamer there. Oh, you brought MK? Azrael nodded. We need 4 types of magic for the design to work. 2 uses of blue magic, 1 green, and 1 fire. That means 4 people. What is the point of all that? Frisk wondered. Even with only one of us using magic, the Popato blew up. Oh, we're not firing potatoes this time, Azrael said. He held up a small metal sphere with a divot on one side to slot into the loading mechanism of the spud gun. We're firing this! Kara designed it, and I talked Alpheus into making a prototype. MK took the bullet from Azrael with her tail.
Her?
Yeah. So this is the new... Whoa, dude! This thing's heavy! Kara's grin went from ear to ear, and their eyes twinkled as they recognized the opportunity to educate. Tungsten carbide, the best material in the world for projectiles. Density similar to lead and gold, but stronger than steel, a melting point exceeding 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and unable to be scratched by anything less than diamond. This is the stuff the military uses to make anti-tank rounds. If this thing can't survive our spud gun, nothing can.
How did Alphys get the stuff for that? Because scientists.
This was normally the point at which a good kid would begin rethinking their decisions. After all, propelling metal at extremely high speeds had a very good chance of injuring anyone it struck. And even if it hit no one at all, it could still give someone a fright from a near miss. But they were all too excited to try out this new material to consider the potential ramifications of their mischief.
What about knockback? Did they think about kickback at all? Oh, wait, it's magic.
Well, the magic will probably help stabilize it all.
They're firing this at a paper target?
Yes.
With only a tiny sheet of metal.
I'm sure that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, not gonna shatter anything or hurt anybody. Royal's not gonna be mad at all.
No.
Definitely try it.
No, this is all a very simple thing.
I'm going to make this.
No, you're not. So, run this by me one more time, MK asked. What are we doing, and what is my part in it? Kara double-checked the specs. You're better with green than blue magic, right? In that case, we need you to hold the compression tanks together with binding magic. They're going to be under a lot of pressure, more than they were actually designed for, so without green magic, they would explode in our faces. Ree, can you handle the tanks? Yeah, Azrael said with a nod. That makes sense. So I'm pushing gas into them? Making it even more condensed and more powerful? Kara nodded. Yes, exactly. Frisk, you'll be in charge of the fire magic. As the gas gets compressed, it will cool down, but we need everything to be hot for the gas particles to hit maximum speed. Meanwhile, I will reduce the weight of our, potato. In theory, the pneumatic forces will be maximized by acting on a nearly weightless object, and then, as soon as it flies out of my range, the weight will return and grant it the momentum to cut through wind resistance. That will give us maximum speed, power, and range from relatively humble equipment. Frisk, do you want the honor of being the one to fire it? Frisk shook their head. You're the one who thought this up, and your magic's the easiest bit. I think you should do it. Azrael considered arguing against this, but thought the better of it. If it worked, they could all have a turn.
If it worked and didn't shatter the sheet of metal and didn't injure anyone.
Look, I'm sure it's going to be fine.
I don't think shattering the sheet of metal will be the problem.
I think nothing bad's going to happen.
No problem, especially since it's in Toriel's backyard. Didn't they say they wouldn't do it at Toriel's house because Toriel wouldn't approve? Yeah.
They set the potato gun up on a tripod so that none of them would have to carry it. Each of the kids took up their positions, MK and Azrael on the far sides, with Kara and Frisk in the middle. They were all wearing sound-suppressing earmuffs to protect their ears, though someone had to help MK into hers, and Azrael's ears had been stuffed into his like an overfull clothes hamper. Kara grabbed the gun underneath the barrel where the trigger was. MK, you're first. Start us off. MK nodded. Fortifying canisters! She shouted, her green magic flowing around the cans to solidify them. Azrael was next. Compressing propellant! As his magic worked, the gun began to shake. Compression at 200% normal levels! How are the canisters, MK? Ha! This is nothing, she boasted. Give me more! More power!
No.
Azrael continued his work. Frost began to form on the outside of the canisters as the gas inside was squeezed into a much smaller area than it was ever meant to go. The gun itself rattled like a diesel engine was inside it. He struggled to make himself heard over the roar of the gun. Compression at 300% normal levels! That'll do, Kara said. Frisk, start the fires! Roger! Frisk's magic couldn't be seen, but it could most certainly be felt. Everyone flinched as a new source of heat erupted in the center of the formation, a space heater being flicked on during an already scorching summer day. The frost on the canisters melted and dripped and then steamed away. Attack power full! Preparing projectile for launch! Kara shouted. The tiny nub of hardened metal glowed blue as Kara added their own magic to the mix. Perhaps it didn't compare to the difficulty of the other tasks, but it was no less important. It's ready! All systems green! Our hearts are beating as one!
What?
Azrael was a little concerned about their half-sibling channeling Undine, but it was a little too late to worry about that now.
Yeah, that is great. Yeah.
Everything's ready, Frisk, he said, a little strain in his voice. Start the countdown! Kara struggled to point the rattling gun at their target, and their grip on the trigger intensified. Frisk intoned, T-minus 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0! Bah! Nobody quite remembered how the next moment played out. When it was all over, the kids were splayed out across the lawn as the wreckage of the spud cannon smoldered. Pieces of the cannon rained down from above, and bits of pipe had scattered all across the lawn. MK was the first to recover. She stood up, dazed, and looked around at the remains of the project. Success! She shouted, jumping into the air to knock her headphones off. Azrael coughed. That was a success! As he rose to one knee and then stumbled a little as he got to his feet. Frisk held their head as they got up. Well, what even was that? What happened? Kara coughed and waved smoke away from their face. The gun blew up, they said. I guess even if the tanks could handle that kind of pressure, the rest of it couldn't. So when I released the pressure by pulling the trigger, everything went in every direction. Azrael still looked uncertain. I could have sworn that I heard 2 explosions, though. A hint of unease crept into Kara's smile. I think the second one might have been a sonic boom. It happens when an object moves faster than the speed of sound.
That means it was a success, and it went very fast.
The kids looked at each other. Then their heads swiveled over to survey the yard. A bullet is aerodynamically shaped to reduce drag. This not only allows it to fly faster, it keeps it flying straighter. Musket balls were notoriously inaccurate, as they would get buffeted by the wind from all directions, careening wildly through the air and causing unpredictable ricochets. This fact burned itself into their minds as their vision panned over the yard to see where their sphere-shaped projectile had gone. The target was completely untouched. Instead, the path of the ball could be traced by the wreckage it left in its wake. The shot completely destroyed the PVC pipe used as the gun's barrel, splitting it in 2. It then burnt out a smoking furrow in the dirt, which hopped and skipped in a lazy list right before veering sharply left when it hit a stone. The rock, which was unfortunate enough to be in its path, had a sizable chip taken out of its surface, still red-hot where it was struck. The bullet continued, slicing a line across Toriel's vegetable garden, before kicking up sharply to smash through a second-floor window.
That's nice.
So is this going through the air or the ground?
How did
Both.
it hit the ground at first if it was on a tripod? If the gun was on a tripod?
Because
Because if the bullet was shooting out that fast, it would not have hit the ground at first unless the gun shot downward.
Well, I don't know. I would assume that it, in the explosion, the whole thing tipped over and aimed downwards.
Okay, then it would go into the ground.
From their vantage point, they couldn't see where the projectile ended up in the house, but they could only assume the damage did not end with what they could see. A shape appeared at the window, and a goat woman peered out. Toriel could not yet know what happened, but through Mother's intuitions, she must have realized who was responsible. "Children!" she shouted through the broken window. All the children gave the signal at the same time. "Run for it!" The kids fled in all directions in a mad scramble. Though they were united moments before, now it was everyone for themselves. They all knew they couldn't escape righteous judgment forever, and attempting to run would only make the inevitable consequences worse. But every moment they were able to avoid Miss Dreamer was a moment that they were free and unpunished, and that was time well worth fleeing for.
Let's try this.
Final notes.
Yeah.
Seriously, do not try this at home.
What? Let's try this at home.
Coram Deo's kids, this means you.
Come on, they did that.
I don't care. I'm still gonna
Let's
try this.
try this at home.
No,
I'm just gonna
I
go.
want to try. Listen to it.
you don't have any magic, so we're all safe
Then we'll
How did
just.
they even get the magic?
from your shenanigans.
How did they get the magic?
Magic?
Wait, if they could get the magic and it was
Then
Frisk
surely
who
we
was a
could have
human,
magic.
doesn't that mean that they could do Operation Fire Sled with Frisk?
Ooh, that would be great.
Yeah, but
Which
I
means it would
mean,
be like-
it is a scorching summer day, and there's no large blocks of ice,
They could
and
wait till the winter.
probably Toriel's onto that now. Anyway, so there you go.
That was
A
good.
story by TheArchimage written with certain children in mind.
Right.
Let's do this.
Nope.
If they can have magic, so can we.
Yeah, well,
We just need one more kid. Maybe somebody
Like
else.
Claire.
yeah,
Sure.
Claire
Claire
would
would
definitely.
lucked out.
yeah, well, let's just be thankful that you don't have magic.
What? We need magic.
Nope.
How do you get magic?
You can't. Write your own story.
We need magic.
Stop saying magic.
All right.
I bet you're gonna say that was not just a Popato by the Archimage.
Well, it was.
Oh, what do I need to end this?
Yeah. Oh, is it still recording?
This was Not Just a Popato by TheArchimage.
Does that mean it's the same Frisk that's in How to Save a Soul if you pronounce
And the
it
same
Popato?
Kara. And the same Kara.
Ooh, good question.
Exactly.
But I would somewhat doubt it.
Like,
But if it's the
so
same
it's
Kara.
still Frisk that pronounces Popato says Popato instead of potato,
doesn't
but
mean-
it's a
All
completely
good questions.
But
I
it-
don't know.
Kara,
But it is
you're
the
asking
same
if it could be
Kara.
seen by everybody.
But it is the same Kara, right?
Kara could be seen by everybody.
Yeah,
Maybe it's like this is like a long lost sequel to all
maybe
the
it's
things that
the
haven't been written yet.
something in the far distant future after How to Save a Soul.
Yes, exactly.
Well, who knows?
Let's do this.
For
No,
what? Oh, the potato
no,
gun.
no.
Yeah.
Okay, so where are
You
we
could
gonna
maybe
get
make
the
a normal
tungsten?
potato
Where are we
gun.
gonna get the tungsten carbine bullet
Yeah,
thing?
right. Yeah.
I have a marshmallow gun.
See, I'm pretty.
Jeff, you could-
It's pretty
If
safe
they
for me to
have
read
the
this to you
helium in
because you
Virginia,
can't do it.
Oh yeah.
You can get something there.
I don't get how the helium makes the potato lighter. Because if you put helium into something, it doesn't. Like, it's. Helium is
No, I
lighter
think
than
that
air,
it was
but-
Kara's magic that made it lighter.
Yeah, because of
And then as
originally-
soon as it went out of Kara's range, then it would get heavier again.
And what was the helium supposed
That was
to
the
help
I
make
don't
it
know,
lighter for?
maybe that's the kind of gas you use in an actual potato gun. I don't actually know.
I thought it originally was compressed air, they said.
That is true.
Why
No, I
don't-
don't know, maybe helium
if the
compresses even
potato
better.
gun,
I don't know.
If the potato vaporized in their first attempts, then why did they keep trying to make it better and faster?
Because then
Because-
the
Because
Because-
obviously it was a failed experiment and it had to be
exactly.
Kara was determined
But why
to make it
did
work.
it bounce
That's
on the ground? If the bullet hit the ground,
Undyne.
wouldn't it just bury itself into the ground
Um,
instead of bouncing all over the place?
well, maybe it ended
And
up
rolling all over the
shooting
place?
at almost a straight line.
I know, but if it's
until it
going in a
hit
straight
the
line,
rock.
wouldn't it
I don't know.
I don't know. I will pass your concerns and comments on to the author
We
Is
just
it still
did.
recording?
for future
Yeah, it's still
consideration and
recording. And
edits.
And yeah,
Oh.
then maybe we'll get a sequels to this of more Try This at Home stories.
Yeah.
that's right. We need to not have a whole series called Try This at Home.
I love stories where it's just Kara and Frisk and Azrael and sometimes Monster Kid, and they're doing things that they should not be doing.
Why did they do
Because
it in
they're not-
Toriel's backyard? If they
Because
didn't
they
think
were at
Toriel would
Toriel's
approve,
Because
then they do
nobody's
it in
smart enough to
Asbor's
remember that part.
backyard. Simple.
Well, they figured they were just going to be shooting a little target on the fence or
Yeah.
whatever.
At
And
very high speeds.
yeah,
I thought the second explosion would be like something in the house.
sonic boom.
I
yeah.
thought the second explosion
If it
was
was
the
a sonic
bullet
boom,
exploding.
then the
The
bullet
speed is
probably
all
isn't in the town or something.
The bullet may have left the house as well.
Yeah,
and possibly not be a
it may have.
window.
There may be
Asbor's
various
house
other
as well.
angry neighbors who are going to be.
Or like angry people in another town.
That's
Yes.
probably not that far, but
Who knows?
also if the gun exploded, how did the potatoes still? Except it wasn't a potato. How did it still fly the way it was supposed to? If the gun
Why didn't it
exploded
just kind
before
of
it could
flop?
do.
Well, but it didn't. It didn't even get to the target. The whole thing, the PVC pipe that was the barrel of the gun split
PVC
open.
pipe?
Yeah, I think that's what it said.
You think that's gonna hold it?
Well, it
Yeah.
was meant. They didn't expect it to come out the side of the barrel. They meant for it to go
I
down.
want to make an actual spud gun. Sounds kind of fun.
And then we can like
Yeah.
add a couple cool modifications to it.
See, isn't this the
Yeah.
best outcome of this story?
No,
Yeah.
no, it's not. You were supposed to say, "Oh, Daddy, that was a terrible thing that happened to those children. We will never do anything like
We
that.
will always do things like that.
Thank goodness we have learned what not to do, and now we will behave and play quietly and not do things like this."
We will do
That
all
was
the-
exactly what you were supposed to say.
But
We-
you could
we
do this
said-
version of a gun without magic.
Daddy, that's basically what we said.
It wouldn't be too hard.
What, that you're gonna now be careful and safe and never try anything like this?
Basically.
Is that what you said?
That's about what we
I'll have to
said.
go back and listen to see if that's what you said, because I thought I heard something else.
Maybe your hearing isn't that great.
Oh,
Read
that's
another
possible.
Archimage story and keep recording. Will
That's
you
all
read
I got.
Another story.